The identity field, reorganization on Earth now. A higher octave transmission on the current human transition. Humanity is not merely changing behavior. Humanity is restructuring the architecture through which reality itself is interpreted. The first understanding, the identity field, is not simply personality, it is the entire energetic, emotional, neurological, psychological, and perceptual architecture through which a human being experiences existence. It includes the nervous system, memory patterns, emotional conditioning, subconscious survival programs, inherited ancestral imprints, social identity, trauma architecture, perception filters, energetic boundaries, and the internal definition of self. For thousands of years, human identity on Earth was primarily organized around survival, tribal belonging, fear reduction, reproduction, hierarchy, control, scarcity, and external validation. This created what may be called the survival-based identity matrix. The current planetary cycle is destabilizing this structure. Why the reorganization is happening now? Earth has entered a period of accelerated informational and energetic amplification. This amplification is occurring simultaneously through planetary cycles, technological acceleration, collective emotional overload, global interconnection, nervous system saturation, and rapid consciousness exposure. Humanity can no longer remain unconscious at previous levels while carrying this degree of energetic intensity. Thus, the species enters identity destabilization. The old psychological architecture becomes incompatible with the current field pressure. The core purpose of the process. The purpose is not distraction. The purpose is coherence evolution. The old human identity was largely fragmented. Oneself for survival, oneself for relationships, oneself for society, oneself internally, oneself spiritually. The emergent field pressures, human to word, alignment between internal truth and external reality. This is why false structures now collapse faster. The field no longer easily supports prolonged fragmentation. The planetary nervous system shift. Earth itself functions as a living biospheric intelligence system. Human nervous systems are interconnected with environmental fields, emotional collective resonance, social information networks, and planetary electromagnetic activity. As collective pressure increases, human nervous systems enter overload thresholds. This produces worldwide symptoms: anxiety, exhaustion, derealization, emotional volatility, identity confusion, spiritual seeking, nervous fatigue, meaning crisis, and existential instability. These are not merely individual failures, they are signs of collective transition stress. The 7 stages of identity field reorganization. 1. Disturbance. The individual begins feeling internal friction, dissatisfaction, emotional exhaustion, a subtle emptiness. All the motivations weaken. External success stops producing internal fulfillment. The soul field begins withdrawing energy from outdated structures. 2. Fracturing. The old identity loses coherence. This phase may involve emotional breakdowns, confusion, isolation, loss of direction, relationship changes, spiritual questioning, or nervous system exhaustion. The ego attempts to preserve continuity, but the deeper consciousness already knows the old structure cannot continue. 3. Exposure. Hidden material surfaces. This includes trauma, emotional suppression, false identities, unconscious patterns, addictions, inherited beliefs, and unresolved grief. Many mistake this phase for regression. It is actually revelation. The unconscious becomes visible. 4. The void phase. One of the most misunderstood stages. The old self dissolves, but the new self is not yet stabilized. This creates sensation of emptiness, disconnection, timelessness, uncertainty, lack of motivation, silence, and identity suspension. Humans often panic here and attempt to rebuild the old identity, but the void is a recalibration chamber. 5. Field reconfiguration. New patterns begin reorganizing. The person feels drawn toward authenticity, embodiment, purpose, simplicity, creativity, emotional truth, and coherence. Perception changes. Old environments feel energetically incompatible. 6. Embodiment. The new identity stabilizes into behavior. Boundaries change. Choices change. Relationships change. Attention changes. The person no longer performs reality the same way. They become less reactive, more conscious, more internally anchored. 7. Coherence participation. The individual begins consciously interacting with reality rather than unconsciously surviving it. Life becomes less about fear management and more about conscious creation, alignment, service, expression, and embodied awareness. The global timeline split. The timeline split is not primarily about separate planets or fantasy dimensions. It is about divergence in consciousness architecture. As the field intensifies, coherent identities stabilize differently from fragmented identities. Thus, human beings inhabiting vastly different experiential realities while sharing the same earth. One person moves toward clarity, emotional integration, embodiment, creative participation. Another moves toward fear loops, aggression, numbness, escapism, identity rigidity. The divergence accelerates now. Why many feel they cannot return to their old life? Because the field memory has changed. Once consciousness expands beyond certain thresholds, the nervous system cannot fully relax inside previous levels of unconsciousness. Thus, many feel, I cannot go back, and they are correct. The identity field has already reorganized beyond compatibility with the old structure. The role of the body. The body is central. The transition is not purely spiritual. The nervous system must physically adapt to increased emotional and informational intensity. Fast grounding becomes essential. Sleep, hydration, nature, breathing, embodiment, emotional honesty, reduced overstimulation, creativity, and human connection. Without grounding, people become spiritually dissociated rather than coherent. What humanity is moving toward, not perfection, not utopia, but greater consciousness participation. The emerging human template is organized more around awareness, emotional intelligence, nervous system coherence, authenticity, intuitive perception, and conscious responsibility. The old world was built primarily through external control. The emergent field requires internal coherence. The final higher octave transmission. The identity field reorganization now occurring on Earth is a species level transition. The old survival architecture weakens. The coherent human architecture begins emerging. This process creates instability because humanity exists between cycles, between unconscious survival and conscious participation. The collapse, many fear, is not only destruction, it is revelation. The field now amplifies truth faster than illusion can stabilize. Thus, every human is being invited toward alignment, not forced, invited. The new earth does not emerge through escape from reality, it emerges through greater consciousness embodied within reality itself.